Bonjour, nous sommes sur la chaîne Perditions-idéologiques et aujourd'hui nous allons rencontrer un invité inhabituel. C'est un étudiant américain qui va nous raconter ce qui se passe aux États-Unis. Et donc l'émission va se tenir en anglais. So, I'm very happy to see you, John.
Me
John
too.
Greenspan, well, which is my family name, supposed to be the family business to struggle anti-Semitism, I would say. Anyway, you are a rising junior at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. You are majoring in fisheries and wildlife conservation biology with an emphasis of wildlife conservation. So, a very noble profession that you have chosen.
Thank you.
And it seems mostly that you are mostly Jewish students' life conservation defender lately. You are the vice president of the resurrected University of Minnesota chapter of Students Supporting Israel, which you can see on your t-shirt, SSE. Right. You have organized 4 events for SSE since restarting it. I'm sorry. It's at this founding
Good.
location. You've worked in tandem with all Jewish organizations on campus, as well as the Israel Campus Coalition, ICC, to fight a BDS vote in student government. We also try to fight BDS here in France.
Yeah.
You've been also interviewed on Star by CBS News, and we'll see what you said when they interviewed you. And you also wrote, well, you gave 2 interviews to Star Tribune. So, Jan, we'll all in France, we've seen what is going on in American universities, and
Yeah.
we've seen it after the 7th of October. I personally was asked to analyze the discourses of American presidents, those of Harvard, MIT, and Penn, who explained that everything depended on the context, even Hamas support. But what we see nowadays, especially after what we saw in Columbia University, is probably for us the first open public manifestation of Jew hatred authorized on campus. So I also read in what you said that some Jew students were asked to attend classes virtually because it was
Yeah.
dangerous for them to come to the campus. So in France, except of leftist anti-Semitic parties, no one believes it's about a Palestinian cause or any Palestinian support. Many people think that all these manifestations are clearly anti-Jewish. So my first question to you, what is the general climate in the American university after the 7th of October?
Yeah. So the climate is in general scary. I mean, it's anti-Semitic and that's undeniable. I've heard people say, oh, it's just anti-Zionist. It's not anti-Semitic. But when I, am walking to class on campus and I see a flyer with a crossed out Magen David, Star of David, that's not just anti-Zionist, that is anti-Semitic. Now, for me, I think if you say, um, I think anti-Zionism can't be separated from anti-Semitism. I mean, I think criticism of Israel can be, but anti-Zionism, the idea that Jews should not have a homeland where they can be safe, especially now when anti-Semitism has spiked in countries all over the world except in Israel. If you say no, Jews shouldn't be able to go to Israel, you are saying Jews should be forced to live in anti-Semitic climates, which I don't know how you can say that that's not anti-Semitic. Um, but yeah, I mean the climates on campus is especially bad. I think the ADL has said that it's been a 300% increase on American campuses in anti-Semitism alone, which is insane. Um, I mean, at one of the encampments today, one of our SSI chapters just sent in a WhatsApp group chat an image that police took showing that there were multiple knives and a gun found at one of these encampments, which is insane. I mean, why are these people being let on to our campuses? There is another campus where a convicted murderer was found to be staying at the encampment, and eventually one of our SSI chapters did some research and found them out and reported them to the police. And the university just said, "Oh, we didn't know they were there." and
What do,
we talked to the police and arrested them.
yeah, what do they want? The encampment, okay, they're here, and we saw the same thing here in Sciences Po, which is a political school and
Mhm.
School of Political Studies, and in the Sorbonne University. What do they want? What is their purpose?
Right. I mean, I think it depends on what kind of rung of the ladder the people who are attending are. I mean, everyone's seen that viral video of the Colombia protester where they don't know what the hell they're talking about. The person asked, "Why are you protesting?" And they say, "I don't know." And they ask their friend who also doesn't know. I mean, we've all seen that. I've talked to people who, who friends who I know are good people who have gone to the encampments and joined in the chants because they don't know what's going on. They just, they get all their news from TikTok and Instagram and all that sort of stuff. So I think a good amount of people who go there are just going there either because they think they're doing the right thing, you know, even if it's misguided, or even some of them, it's not for doing the right thing. It's because it's a trend, you know. It's the same thing as like, if everyone is wearing designer brand clothes and so they start wearing them. It's the same thing. I mean, I was walking in the Madison College campus because I'm back home in Madison during the summer, and I saw a girl wearing a pink hoodie that says like Gaza on it, and it's like a designer brand thing. And I see people wearing keffiyehs. They don't know what they mean. They couldn't point out Gaza on a map. They don't know anything about this conflict. I've seen things about people saying like, I can't believe I only just started hearing about Palestine 4 months ago. They don't know what they're talking about, but they're joining in because it's a popular thing and they want to be on the right side of history
How do they know it's the right side of history? What do you think about
because they're
that?
told it's the right side of history.
By
I
who?
mean, by by their teachers, by their friends. I mean, there have been multiple teachers. Luckily, I haven't had these teachers, but I've heard about these teachers who had told their students that they could get a 100% on the finals or they could get extra credit or whatever if they skipped their finals and went to the encampments. That's insane. We shouldn't have teachers who are specifically encouraging students to join in on potentially dangerous, not potentially, these are dangerous. I mean, there have been assaults, harassment, intimidation. We shouldn't have teachers encouraging this of our students, but that's what we're having. And because we're having these teachers encourage these students, we end up having, students who are essentially brainwashed into believing that, you know, um, Palestinians are the good guys and all terrorism is justified and victory to Al-Aqsa flood and all this sort of stuff.
So you want to say that this is coming from your professors, from those who are supposed to transmit and to give your knowledge, and what they do exactly what some intellectuals used to do during communism and Nazism. I mean,
Yeah.
they are indoctrinating young people, and people follow this indoctrination, right?
Yeah, and then I mean it's a cycle. It's cyclical. I mean, because these students, they get taught this and then the very big activists of the college community, they end up getting up in arms. They get their pitchforks and their torches and they create mobs, they throw tantrums and in their encampments until people listen to them. And there's a very big uh it's very important in the States to have, extracurricular activities when you're applying for jobs and stuff, especially as a teacher. And so if you can show your extracurricular activities was you were a huge activist, that is a really easy way to become a teacher and a professor. It's a very big selling point.
Even
And
if you
so
support Hamas, because it's an
even if you
activist.
at this point it seems like it's especially if you support Hamas or Hezbollah, or especially one thing we're seeing is PFLP. I mean, at University of Minnesota, me and a couple of other people from SSI, including our founder of SSI, Ilan Sinelnikov, there were four of us, and we decided to protest, against like 200 what we call Hamasniks, pro-Hamas students, and there was a group of them waving the flag of the PFLP. I mean, it wasn't like they were waving the Palestinian flag. It was literally the PFLP flag, and we confronted them about it.
And it's
And
not
later,
a forbidden, it's in France, it's considered to be as an terrorist organization.
same in the United States.
And it's allowed. I mean, they can freely move in the
Yeah,
campus.
I mean, we ended up confronting them about it. We said, we don't care if you raise a Palestinian flag, whatever, but raising the flag of the PFLP, people who are known for hijacking planes, for committing, unadulterated
Murders.
acts of terrorism, kidnapping hostages. I mean, that's disgusting and deplorable, and that should not be allowed on our campuses at all. Um, and after we confronted them on it, they kind of just laughed at us. They refused to talk with us about it. They essentially just said, go back to Germany or go back to New York or go back to Poland, whatever state or place they can think of that has a somewhat that had a, I should say, a somewhat big population of Jews. Um, and then later during this protest, they tried to steal one of our Israeli flags from our founder Elon, who held on to it, but it caused him to trip, which is assault. I mean, they purposefully attempted to put their hands in another person. And then at these protests they have what they call marshals, which are other Hamasniks who put on these neon vests who are supposed to be the security of the events. And they ended up surrounding us, the people who were attacked, and not the people supporting terrorism who attacked us. And when we tried to tell them, why are you not, attacking them? Why did you come only after they did something? They said, oh, they're not with us. We thought they were with you. And we said, why would you think they're with us when they attacked us and when they're raising the flag of a designated terrorist organization? And they said, oh, we thought they were APAC spies. They don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they make up all these conspiracy theories. It's the same thing as the space lasers thing or the Jews are all lizard people. It's never rational. It's always irrational. But the problem with a conspiracy theory is there's no way to prove it wrong, because when you provide evidence, they say, "Oh, propaganda." That's Zionist propaganda.
Right. We have the same in France. But what about the other teachers? Do you have teachers who protest against their colleagues and who show the students that it is propaganda, but the propaganda from the Hamas defenders?
Right. So we do have those, and I mean it depends on the university. Like at Columbia, a professor there, Shai Davidai, um had gone quite viral. I mean, pretty quickly after October 7th, he gave a speech about how SJP was pro-Hamas and how Columbia couldn't protect the students. More recently, though, I know that they deactivated his ID for getting into the university for no real reason other than him being a Jewish professor who had spoken out against it. Um, so I mean, sorry.
Good
So
member of the struggle.
yeah, he is. Yeah, he's the Lion of Judah, is what we call him. But I mean, we do have professors who are talking out. I know of other ones at other universities. I don't know their names. Even at my university, we had a couple professors who showed up to one of our SSI protests and who have been working with us and stuff. Um, but a lot of the professors are simply scared. Same with the students. I mean, especially in Minnesota, the about 1% of the college community is Jewish, which is a pretty small amount. And when we see such blatant anti-Semitism, so many people coming out against Jews, it's scary to come out and say, this is who I am. I am a proud Jew. I'm a proud Zionist, and I'm not just gonna sit down and let these terrorist sympathizers take over my campus. Um, and I agree that it's scary. I mean, every time I step out there, I'm scared. But I keep telling people it's so much scarier what will happen if we just sit down and let them do their thing. I mean, we see at campuses, we see their encampments, we see, massive anti-Semitism surges at places where there aren't Jewish students or even students in general. They don't have to be Jewish students who come out and say, no, this is disgusting. And so if we do nothing, we end up with these encampments. So we have to do something. We have to fight, but that doesn't mean it's not scary for us. So.
Yes, that's very true. Do you have other students, non-Jewish students, who support you?
Yes, yeah, we do. There's a reason that SSI is a Zionist organization first and foremost, and not a Jewish organization like Hillel or Chabad would be, because we recognize that while there is a big overlap between Judaism and Zionism, they don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? Zionists, Zionists don't only have to be Jews. I mean, in our SSI
Right.
chapter in Minnesota, we've even had non-Jewish students sign up because they said, hey, I support Israel, I support Jewish students. I don't want to, just sit back and allow these thugs to come onto our campus and terrorize Jewish students. And I mean, I know that in ICC, Israel Campus Coalition, that we just talked about earlier, who helped us try and fight a BDS vote. Of course, we lost, but their vice president is not Jewish. She just started working because she saw the injustices, and she said, "I can't just sit by and watch." So I mean, there are plenty of people who are supporting Israel, supporting Jewish students, even if they're not Jewish. I mean, a prime example is the son of Hamas, who has been a very viral key player in this debate. And he's Arab, but he is Zionist. He understands from an insider perspective what Hamas and these terrorizers want to do.
True. And can you compare the situation on the campus before and after the 7th of October? Did it change? Was it already scary or anti-Semitic? What's your appreciation?
Um, I mean, I remember like last year, there was like one time I was eating in the dining hall and I heard a couple students having a conversation talking about Palestine and stuff, and they were, spouting misinformation. But it was like three kids and they were, eating lunch or whatever, and they clearly didn't know what they were talking about. And that was it. You know, most of these students had never heard of Palestine before, had never heard of um Israel before, all that sort of stuff. But then, they see TikTok and they follow Al Jazeera and all this sort of stuff, and they hear the professors talking about it and they say, "Oh, I guess the Jews are bad." We've seen comments on posts SJP and SSI alike, um, with which a lot of times say stuff like that Austrian painter might have been right, referencing Hitler, who perpetrated the mass genocide of Jews, the largest genocide in history. We see things like people with profile pictures of Hitler with the Palestinian colors, the red, white, green, and black. Um,
Well, that's quite true. He was a very friend with the Mufti of Jerusalem, who was a
yeah,
Nazi himself.
we
So, well, we can understand that.
yeah, there was there's these things where people doctor photos of like Netanyahu next to Hitler or whatever. And so we've been posting around flyers with the picture of the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem shaking hands with Hitler, and we say we don't have to doctor facts in order to prove who the real Nazis are.
Exactly.
It's insane.
What do you think? Who are the main propagators of this anti-Jewish speech? Because the manifestations seem to be prepared and well prepared. And what do you think? Does it come from white decolonial students, from Arab Muslim students, or from this kind of professors who teach post-colonialism, decolonialism, racist, gender and stuff studies? What's your appreciation of who are the main, propagators or those who
Right.
prepare the manifestations?
Right. I mean, that's an interesting question because it's hard to answer.
So I will ask another question about that.
Yeah, go
What
ahead.
is your social appreciation? What is it, the social class or milieu, as we say, they come from? like, this upper middle class, poor people who study at the university? Is it possible for you to give a quick appreciation?
Right. So, I mean, the university, you're typically going, especially at these Ivy League universities like Columbia, those are going to be mostly people who are middle to upper middle class to just like rich. Um, you know, they're expensive schools with expensive tuition, and for the most part, unless you have a lot of scholarships, you're going to have a pretty rich family. Like, there was news that came out recently of a protester in Colombia, who they labeled as a 40-year-old kid, I believe, which I guess kids are getting older. Um, but they estimated that his dad gives him like $2 million a year, and he assaulted a janitor who is working in one of the buildings at Columbia who gets paid $19 an hour. So, a lot of these kids are entitled, rich people, but I think, you know, a lot of them too are people who are just getting by. I have a lot of friends who are, they have to work two, three jobs to pay tuition alongside scholarships and stuff. So, I mean, there definitely is like people from all different classes, but as for like what is I'd say general class, I'd say it's probably middle to upper middle class is where most people fall.
This is interesting because, very often there is a kind of doxa, common knowledge that says that people are not cultivated. They don't know history. And if they knew history, they wouldn't behave like they do, which is completely wrong, in my opinion, because more people are cultivated, more they are anti-Semitic. And I think there were studies about American universities who proved that this is the fact. Let's say, what do they know, American students who you could talk to? What is Zionism? How do they define it? I'll tell you why I ask this question, because we've got the same problems over here. And when I talked to a representative of the Palestinian committee, I asked him, what is Zionism? So he told me, this is fascism. They said, so what is fascism? And he answered, this is Zionism. So I would like to know what is the answer you could receive or hope to receive from the American students, anyway, you talk to.
Right. So if you talk to a pro-Zionist, they're going to say what I said earlier, that
Of
Zionism
course,
is
of course.
it's the right for Jews to have a homeland, to be safe and secure and in their ancestral indigenous homeland of Israel. Um, if you ask a Hamasnik, if you go to their slumber parties, as I've been calling them, their encampments, and you ask them, for the most part, you get some typical answers, like you said, that you get it's fascism, um, you get it's racist, it's apartheid, it's uh, those big buzzwords that generate a lot of buzz. They make, when you hear them, you go, oh, it's racist, they must be bad. And that's what they do. That's why they're using genocide as a buzzword right now, because it makes people instantly go, oh, that's a really bad thing. These people must be bad, etc.
Right, but
But
yeah, I'm sorry, Jan.
yeah,
There are many bad people in the world. Let's say, did they hear about what happened in Syria when Bashar al-Assad have killed so many Syrians? Or did they hear about China, where the Uyghur population is suffering now? Are there any talks about that among the students, or they are only focused on the Jewish question?
right. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. They are focused on some things that are not Palestinian, as long only when they can appropriate them. And what I mean by that is, on my campus, University of Minnesota, um, in their encampment, they actually put up a teepee, like a Native American teepee, with
Mm.
signs saying, Turtle Island for Free Palestine, Turtle Island being a Native American thing, and teepees obviously also being a Native American things. And they just completely appropriate these things. They have no regard for what actual Native Americans want to believe, want to speak. They steal their voices. A group that historically in America has not been able to have their voices heard. They appropriate their voices, they steal their voices, they steal their culture in order to propagate their message without fighting for these people who are actually being repressed, especially like you said, the Syrians, the Uyghurs, uh, the Palestinians in Jordan, even who are under actual apartheid. I mean,
Or in Iraq or Lebanon.
yeah. I mean, it does. I mean, look pretty much anywhere in that area, and you'll find um or the Christians in the Middle East, where they're being ethnically cleansed in every Arab and Muslim nation. In fact, the only place where Christian population is growing in the Middle East is actually in Israel, but that's a different point. Um, they call that whataboutism when you bring it up, with the idea to say, and then they'll say, well, just because bad is going on somewhere doesn't mean we shouldn't protest bad going on here, which is a great sentiment until you realize that they are singling out a specific place for no real reason. It would be one thing if there was, SJP, but there was also like SJU, Students for Justice for Uyghurs, SJS, Students for Justice for Syrians. If there were all these different organizations and SJP was just one of them, that would be one thing. But the fact that there's SJP, JVP, you know, SDS, even our climate activism organization at my campus is getting in on this, which is disgusting. They're trying to remove Jews from climate activism, which I think is awful. That's something that Greta Thunberg is trying to do as well. Despite the fact that Israel is also one of the greatest contributors to climate activism and to renewable energy and all that sort of stuff. I believe a lot of governments around the world, like we see in the UN, know about these things, and they are purposefully inflating the Israel-Hamas conflict in order to hide behind it so people don't look into, what is going on. That's why all these nations like Syria, like Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, um, China, all of them are propagating this war. They're making Israel to be the bad guy because when Israel is the bad guy, no one is looking at their crimes.
Yeah, right.
And
Now
that's
we
the
know.
point.
Yeah, now we know Putin and what's his name, the Chinese president are meeting. They are
Right.
meeting today. So we're two monsters. The only one who is missing is Yahya Sinwar, but maybe it will come the day he will be there. Another
Right.
question for you. We've seen a lot, and I've seen it in the interview, in the show that I've seen with you, that when you were at your university, you've got not only pro-Palestinian Arabs, the colonial students, and all this stuff. You also had a lot of Jewish students who claim to be pro-Palestinian, and they are the anti-Zionist. So they are very inspired by Chomsky, by Judith Butler. She came here and she just openly said that she doesn't think that the massacre of the 7th of October is an anti-Semitic massacre. It's a resistance answer. So we heard that. What can you say about them? What do they have in their head, and can you analyze their motivations?
Right. So the group you're talking about is JVP, which stands for Jewish Voices for Peace, or as we've been calling them, Jews Validating Pogroms.
Right.
Right. Um, and so these are self-proclaimed Jewish anti-Zionists. We know that at least one of the people running JVP at Minnesota is in fact Jewish. We don't know how many of the people in JVP are actually Jewish, though, but that's irrelevant in this instant. First of all, I'm not really sure how you can claim that Israel is not important to the Jewish religion. I mean, what do they say when they're praying? Do they say Shema Palestine, Elokeinu, Hashem like what do you say? I mean, it's literally Yisrael, Shema Yisrael. It's literally in our central prayer, right? And I mean
Right.
the our scriptures talk about Israel, all over. Um, and so there is some idea with like I don't think JVP really latches onto this, but with some non-student like anti-Zionist Jewish group like the Samis and stuff, they use the claim of like we're only supposed to return to Eretz Israel when the Mashiach comes. Um,
Oh, really?
which
They
is
say that?
that it's what some say.
Okay.
It's what some anti-Zionist Jews that
Yes,
I've talked to have said,
it's
at least I
not
should say.
Ray Carta, a normal statement.
I think it's very funny that they have a their big slogan is not in our name. Which I think is very funny because that's exactly how I feel about them using the moniker of Judaism in order to promote their agenda. Um, they're specifically there to promote anti-Zionism and say it's not anti or sorry, they're there to promote anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism by saying, well, we're Jews and we're okay with it. It reminds me of Kanye West, who is also a virulent anti-Semite, but who basically would allow people to say racist things against African Americans and then claim, well, those aren't racist. I'm black. And I say they're not racist. And of course, almost everyone saw through that and said, no, Kanye, you're just insane. And, these are racist things and you can't speak for the entire black community. Well, it's the same thing with JVP. They're allowing anti-Semitism to pass by saying, well, it's not anti-Semitism because we are token Jews. We are literally using our Jewish identity as a form of tokenism in order to say anti-Semitism is okay as long as we say it's okay. As to why they support this, I think some of it is that they just aren't educated in Judaism. And I'm not necessarily saying that they have to be religious. I think secular Jews are just as much Jews as Orthodox, modern Orthodox, whatever denomination you want to choose. But I think a lot of them, if they were brought up in, say, Reform or Reconstructionist households, they probably didn't go to Hebrew school. They probably didn't talk as much about Jewish culture and all that sort of stuff because Israel isn't just important because it holds Jerusalem, the holy place. It holds Zion, Zion, which is what Zionism comes from. Um, it's also important because it is where Judaism and Jews are from. Um, it has been genetically proven, it has been historically proven, it has been archaeologically proven. There's this myth going around the internet right now among these circles that it's illegal to get a DNA test in Israel, which is absurd. That's just a lie. Like there's no truth to that. Um, but alongside that comes this theory called the Khazar theory, which states that all Ashkenazi Eastern European Jews, like myself, um, were never originally from Eretz Israel. We're never originally from the Middle East, and we're actually a group of European Turks in this place called Khazar that were converted to Judaism, and I think they say the 11th century. That has been virulently disproven by genetics, archaeology, and historical evidence, but they still claim to it because, like I said earlier, with a conspiracy theory, it doesn't matter what evidence you have to disprove it. Conspiracy theories cannot be disproven. That's why you have flat earthers who think the earth is flat. I mean, they'll spend thousands of dollars to prove the earth is round and then or to prove it's flat and then it turns out it's round. They say no, that's just the government, or the manufacturers who made this thing. That it's the same thing. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the law. What does the law say about all these acts? You were talking about assaults. You were talking about
No.
encampment. You were talking about aggressions. So
Right.
it's against American law.
Yeah.
What happens with them?
So I mean, there's multiple laws that they have broken. Just to list a few, there's trespassing. There's actually a not so well known law, but if you cannot group up with more than three people while wearing a mask in order to create or in order to perform a misdemeanor, so like a petty crime, which will then upgrade the crime to be not petty. There's also harassment, intimidation, wrongful detention. I mean, we've seen, or wrongful detainment, sorry. We've seen videos of, I believe it was UCLA, but it could have also been Columbia, where a Jewish student um, wants to walk to class, and there's four Hamasniks wearing their keffiyehs as masks and stuff who won't let him go through just because he's wearing a Magen David. He doesn't say anything pro-Israel. He doesn't say anything against them. He says, "I want to go to class. I'm a student here. I have my ID. Let me go to class," and they don't let him. So that's wrongful detainment. That's illegal. Assault. We've seen at multiple things. We've seen uh, concealed carry without a license. Like I said earlier, there were images of weapons that have been found at these protests. Sorry, riots. That's what they really are. Um, I mean, there's so many laws that have been broken, and universities are capitulating to them. I mean, we see some universities are doing what's right and are actually arresting them, suspending, expelling students who break the law, and not only the law, but there's also the universities have their own policies. I mean, like at my university, we have this thing called the Student Code of Conduct, which says you cannot, do any of this stuff, especially against students because of their race, religion, ethnicity, background, etc. Um, and so at my university, they put up an encampment on one day at like 4 a.m. And at 7:30 a.m., the police came, they took it all down, and they arrested 9 people, 6 students, one faculty, and two like non-students. Within a few hours of that same day, all 9 of those people were released. Charges were not pressed, and the suspensions on the on the faculty member and the 6 students were revoked. The suspensions were not revoked for the non-students because the university was like, well, they're not students anyway, so it doesn't matter. And then later that night, the encampment was back up and running. Then they were forced to take it down again later that night by the police. No arrests were made. And then the weekend happened, and then after that, they put it back up, and they were allowed to keep it up for weeks. Not weeks, sorry, for days. Until eventually the president of our university actually capitulated to their demands. He recognized Thawabit, which is the idea that terrorism is justified as long as Jews live in Israel. He agreed to.
Yes, it's a completely anti-Semitic statement.
Yeah. And he acknowledged it as the leader of the so my university, the University of Minnesota, has officially not only acknowledged but supported terrorism outright. Okay. That's what Thawabit is.
That's true.
Not only not giving them consequences, but by capitulating their demands, we are saying not only is this allowed, it's encouraged. Because if you can throw a big enough tantrum and cause a big enough pain in everybody's ass, then we will capitulate to your demands and we'll give you whatever the hell you want.
Right.
Which is
Thank you.
deplorable.
Yeah, I see. We have the same in France. Maybe a little bit better for the time being. We'll see. I wanted to ask you, what do regular Americans think about what happens in the university? Because in the States, university is a country in say, I mean, it's a particular world, and it's more separated from the real life that, let's say, in Europe. So what's the opinion of regular Americans about what happens at the universities?
So I think recently, I forget how recently, it was a few weeks ago, the Biden-Harris administration released another poll results showing that I think still 70% of Americans support Israel, just in general in this current war.
Encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's wonderful to hear, especially because we don't hear about that a lot in the news. Hopefully one day we can get that to 100%, but we got to work cut out for us.
Wishful thinking.
Right. But I mean, the broader American public frankly just laughs at these protests. They see it for what it is. It's a bunch of entitled kids throwing a tantrum to get what they want. What else do you call a group of people who refuse to move, screaming and crying on the grass until their demands are met? That's what toddlers do when they have a meltdown, you know, when they don't want to have nap time. That's what these students are doing. And that's what the American public sees. Um, and not only that, but the American public is seeing counter protesters um, who are singing the national anthem. There was recently, you know, that viral picture of the A.E. Pye brothers holding up an American flag um, while getting water splashed at them, while getting berated by these protesters. Um, I think at a university in, I forget if it was Florida or Texas, there was a massive group of counter protesters who essentially surrounded the encampment and were just singing the national anthem, so you couldn't hear what these rioters were screaming. So I mean, the American public is seeing these entitled brats for what they are, which is very encouraging. The problem is right now in America, going to university is essentially a prerequisite for getting a job. It's not like, you know, the olden days where a degree was used just to get a better job and you could still get a degree on a or a job on, you know, a high school diploma or something. You still can, but it's a lot more difficult. So most people getting jobs are getting degrees at these universities, which means that most of the people who are going to be running our countries in the future are people going to my universities, are people who were supporting these encampments. Because while the American public in general doesn't support these encampments, a lot of college kids do, which is exactly what student supporting Israel is trying to fight against. We want to show these college students that, you know, Israel is a wonderful place, that you don't have to hate Israel, you don't have to hate Jews, that, you know, there's a better way. We can talk about this stuff civilly. We don't have to support terrorism. Resistance isn't always justified. You know, rape isn't resistance. And so that's what we're kind of what we're fighting against. So even though the public in general is against them, we want to get what will be the public, what will be the people running our world, you know, my classmates, my peers, to also see this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jan, and good
Yeah,
luck in this never-ending struggle. Thank you for your
thank you.
witness.